All right, so I don't know why I'm doing this really, but I feel like Dreamcast Guy gets a lot of he gets away with a lot of bullshit, and I kind of want to call out some of the things that he says and call out him as I guess like somebody who covers gaming in general. This guy, I've known of his existence for like about 10, 15 years, I want to say. And there's certain things that he says in a reaction. And I haven't watched the full reaction yet. I haven't even watched the full state of play. I've only watched the bits that were important to me because I don't like to hedge my bets on a state of play, Nintendo Direct, stuff like that being great. Because if you do, you end up wanting... you end up wanting something really good to happen, and then if it doesn't happen, you just hate it, and then you just trash the company, which is childish, you know, especially when development of games is even more hectic than it used to be. So anyway, let's get into it.
We need to talk about the state of play, but I'm going to...
Already starting out really dramatic. I've never had to do the prayer hands and exhale after a gaming announcement. What do you call that? Just a state of play. Let's just call it a state of play. You know, I never had to do that before, and I don't know why he thinks that, you know, that's a totally normal thing. Like, he's just been waiting on this for like all year or something. Like, bro, it's a state of play. Like, I didn't even expect this shit last week and it just popped up, you know. Relax.
do my best to remain calm. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. What's up, gamers? Dreamcast Guy here, and I just finished watching the State of Play. Now, there was obviously a lot of hype around this event, mostly because this is the beginning of 2021. A lot of us kind of assumed that this is the perfect time for Sony to come out and announce why we should be excited about owning a PlayStation 5 this year, right? Things like Horizon Zero Dawn, Resident Evil 8, Ratchet and Clank, something like Final Fantasy 16. There were a lot of opportunities to come in here and absolutely wow us. This was a much more low-key event than we expected. It was a lot of indie games, it was a lot of very tiny things, but let's go through this beat by beat. Now let's start things off positive. Before I start to dig into a lot of these bad projects,
He said a lot of these bad projects, like, it's okay to have an opinion. Obviously I got my own, but, you know, prefacing your video by saying, hey, there's a lot of tiny things, a lot of indie games, and I think he says soon, he starts talking about House Marquee here in a bit, we'll get to that, but because a game is an indie game does not mean that it's necessarily something that you should scoff at. My close gaming friend circle, they know that I like Salt and Sanctuary, and you know, I've been guilty of saying stuff about indie titles, but Salt and Sanctuary, Bloodstain, I love those games. You know, I never really played Castlevania, the original Castlevanias like that, and Bloodstain was my first taste of a actual Castlevania game. Salt and Sanctuary was a Metroidvania Soulsborne game. It was pretty good, you know. So when people start talking about indie games, I get a little irritated, I guess. I jump back a little bit because I'm just like, damn. Like, you really have the expectation that you're going to really pay like $15 and get a game that lasts an hour or something. And this guy has been into the game too long. Like, look at all those games back there. I don't know if this is a green screen trick, but for somebody with all those fucking games or DVDs, I don't know what the hell they are, but for all that shit back there, he seems to be very ignorant of what could come of a title from a smaller studio. Anyway, let's get back into it.
of things that looked so incredibly lame, I want to start off positive and talk about Returnal. This is Housemarque's upcoming game, and we got a new trailer that was much more focused on combat. Now, the story of Returnal is about this pilot that suddenly stumbles upon this planet that has almost a sort of like evolutionary time loop where she goes there and is battling and trying to fight for her life, and every time she dies, the day resets. She repeats the crash landing, but the entire planet itself also resets, constantly shifting and changing and trying to adapt to be an even more lethal.
Take everything he says with a grain of salt. It might not be 100% accurate. I remember coming to his video when the Final Fantasy VII demo had gotten leaked, and how, you know, it got hacked off of PSN from older versions of the PS4's software. So yeah, he had lied about getting a review copy of a demo sent to him, or a review code for a demo sent to him. And he said that there was like a lot of shit going on that exceeded the demo that everybody else actually got, and nobody, I don't think anybody ever like really caught on to him. There was one guy who made a video about it, but like I think he just sort of disappeared. But yeah, Dreamcast Guy, like, take everything he says with a grain of salt. He might not have been paying attention that well. So yeah,
full paradise. And the idea of this looks fantastic. The more I see of Returnal, the more I'm super into it. I like that there's this weird mystery of her like memories coming onto the planet, the mystery of how this is all working. Like, Returnal seems fantastic. Unlike a lot of these indie games, I went into this event hoping for big reveals. I mean, of course I hope.
He says he went to this event hoping for big reveals, but I'm a little confused because he didn't go anywhere. Like, we all watch State of Play online. It's COVID season, Wabbit season, you know what I mean? So I don't understand why he's expecting something big. Like, if you follow the trend of State of Plays, they normally announce a lot of indie titles. That's like more, like, they will announce indie titles more often than not. And like I said previously, that's not a terrible thing, but you know, you might expect one big thing, one big AAA title out of the bunch, and that's about it. And I think that's what we got with this State of Play, but this guy obviously wanted like 15 different things. It's not E3, my dude. We actually had quite a few big reveals months ago, you know, and I think we're good, but you know, he thinks differently. I guess it's alright.
Hoped for things like possibly Silent Hill. I hope to see something bright and, you know, new. I was hoping to see maybe at least some art or something for God of War, and instead we saw that dodgeball game called Knockout City. Hey, look, it's dodgeball. You know, hooray.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
I
know what dodgeball is, but I didn't see that trailer.
It seriously looks that bad, that bland. It's like Battle Royale but balls deep, and to me, that's absolutely not worth it. An indie game that did look good, of course, is something like Kena. Now, Bridge of Spirits, we finally have a release date. The new trailer is also much more extended. I think that this has a very...
Excuse me. I was actually tight at this because we were supposed to have a release date window of the first quarter of 2021 because they had delayed it initially. And don't get me wrong, I think it's Kena. I think he said it wrong. I think that Kena, Bridge of Spirits, I think that development team, I believe they're called Ember Labs, take your sweet time, take as much time as you need to, and get that game perfected. It's going to be cheaper than most next-gen titles, and I don't believe it's going to be on PS4. Don't quote me on that. It's going to be like $40 or $50. That title I'm actually kind of wary of because we haven't seen that much of it, and everybody on the internet is calling it Game of the Year material, which is ridiculous because we've only seen a couple minutes of gameplay. So that's my thing about it. But I'm sure it'll be great, and I hope it'll be great. So, well, let's just wait and see. So I'll agree, Kena Bridge of Spirits is something nice to see, but I just wish we'd seen more of it by now.
Very interesting art style. I appreciate the fact that this has almost a Disney aesthetic. Now, I'm not really a Disney kid myself. I'm not super into like old school retro art styles, but this really manages to have that.
Did he just say that he's not into super old school retro art styles? Look at that Sonic. There's like a Sonic right to the upper right of his hat, right? There's like a old school Sonic drawing, I'm sure. And hold on, let's wait till his hat bends back down.
Like hype.
Do you know what this console is right here? This is the Dreamcast. That came out like in 1998. Anyway.
Realistic animation style that I kind of appreciate. It seems like something that's very, very difficult to do, and watching it in motion, seeing her in combat, flipping, dodging, casting magic with this art, it's pretty dang impressive. I'm certainly excited for it, which definitely can't be said for the same of things like Crash Bandicoot. I can't believe they started this off, but you know what? I beat Crash Bandicoot 4 back in the day.
I'm just letting you know I don't know what this guy is about to say.
When this first came out 5 months ago, 8 months ago, however long, the game was decent, and of course I loved it. I gave it a decent review score. I enjoyed beating it, but I mean, why are you showing off a PlayStation 5 port of this game? Like, is this really what you want to try and dedicate your state-of-play window time to? Like, you have dedicated eyes of the most hardcore PlayStation fans who are tuning in, maybe trying to figure out if it's worth trying to track down a PlayStation 5. Why didn't you show Elden Ring? Why didn't you show Bloodborne Remastered? Like, I'm blown away that this is...
Is that what's hot in these streets? People want a Bloodborne Remastered? Let that game rest in peace. Like, FromSoft is not that good of a studio that they would, like, work on something like that immediately. We're not going to get a Bloodborne Remaster for a long time. You know, and they're struggling with Elden Ring. And, you know, please forgive me if you like FromSoft, but they're not very good developers. I'm sorry. Like, when I play a game like Neo and you can get a room with people and there's different ways you can save movesets and all this other cool stuff, and then I go back to Dark Souls or Sekiro, it just feels like junk. You know, I have no hype for Elden Ring. It's going to be the same as Dark Souls. It's going to be similar to Bloodborne. It's going to be similar to Demon Souls. But, you know, Are we really like, is that what we're waiting on? Elden Ring? You guys need to chill. Let them develop the shit first. Jesus. And what else did he say he wanted?
Elden Ring. Why didn't you show Bloodborne? Trying to track down a PlayStation 5. Why didn't you show...
Okay, so he said, why didn't you show us something that makes us want to track down a PlayStation 5? So he mentioned that they were the house marquee with Returnal. And we'll see what else that they have in store for us. But there's plenty that make you want a PS5 right now. God of War plays in 60 frames per second on PS5. So does Days Gone. And we got that Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. Like, what the hell is he talking about? Demon Souls, you like Elden Ring so fucking much. Why don't you buy Demon Souls? Can I Bridge the Spirits? Like, you're mentioning a hell of a lot of shit that, you know, we have or will get very soon, and you're like wanting more. Like, they've already showed us enough, in my opinion. What does he want? A racing game? Play Destruction All Stars.
Show Elden Ring. Why didn't you show Bloodborne Remastered? Like, I'm blown away that this is seriously what they decided to show off was Crash Bandicoot, but again, and now on the PlayStation 5. Another indie game they showed off was Solar Ash. This is actually by the people who did Hyper Light Drifter. Now, the idea behind this one is that you're basically this person who's trying to slide and dash and dodge through this, like, intergalactic space cloud inside of a black hole that's eating universes. The game is beautiful, but at times when I see projects like this, I think part of the reason I kind of get taken aback is that they're usually so short. If a game is this good looking but clearly kind of lower budget, typically this is something that you can sit down and finish in a single afternoon. I don't think this is going to be very deep, but at least it's interesting to look at. This is kind of how I feel as well about the side-scrolling game Oddworld Soulstorm. So we've seen Soulstorm before, but this was much more of an...
I don't really want him to start on this. Oddworld is like a cult classic to people. Some people have probably been waiting on this for years, and he's about to shit on it, isn't he? What did he say about this shit?
Usually so short. If a game is this good looking, but clearly kind of lower budget, typically this is something that you can sit down and finish in a single afternoon. I don't think...
Funny, that should be a thumbnail, by the way. I might make that a thumbnail. But I don't understand why this guy is like making such a big deal out of this. Like, if it's a small game and it's cheap, what difference does it make? I think the problem that people have is they don't know how to compartmentalize and understand that some games that are cheap might be short, but it's worth it if they're cheap and they have replay value and they're short. You know what I mean? People are saying that Miles Morales might not be worth it because the game is shorter than the other Spider-Man game. I'm sitting here like, okay, but you can replay it, right? Is there a new game plus? Devil May Cry is not a long game by any means. Devil May Cry 5, you could probably play that and beat it within 2 sittings, but you can still replay it infinitely. I played Devil May Cry 5 like a couple weeks ago. Anyway.
This is going to be very deep, but it's at least interesting to look at. This is kind of how I feel as well about the side-scrolling game Oddworld Soulstorm. So we've seen Soulstorm before, but this was much more of an in-depth look. It was more of a chance to kind of understand how this is supposed to be a larger experience than some of the previous Oddworld games. I mean, Soulstorm seems fine, unlike Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, so I don't care about Five Nights at Freddy's. I love horror games. I'm a big fan of, like, psychological scares. I really love good, giant, gory monsters and stuff. I've never cared about Five Nights at Freddy's because, to me, they're pretty much just jump scare simulators. It's...
Why did he choose to zoom in there? Try and do the YouTube thing. No, so the thing is, I actually used to follow Five Nights at Freddy's pretty well. I actually like the lore. The lore was pretty interesting up until, I think, when it hit 3. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2, you know, I'll, like, theory craft about those all day. I think those are, like, the most interesting in the series. That and possibly 4. But 3 was not the hotness. But anyway, we're not talking about that right now specifically. I hate the conversation of Five Nights at Freddy's isn't scary because it's a jump scare. Like, jump scare has scare in the name, so it scares you. It doesn't matter if it's jumpy or not, or if you're just unsettled by it for like a certain amount of time. I can be scared for something for like 10 seconds before it kills me in a game, or I can be scared of something in my face fucking for like 2 seconds. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you got scared. What kind of shit is that? Like, you know, if you're someone who gravitates more towards the scares that last forever, that's fine. But, you know, I don't think prefacing, like, telling your viewers, I don't like, this game wasn't interesting to watch. Like, okay, you know, to you. But if you check Five Nights at Freddy's trailers and you actually check the gameplays of the of the games when they come out, you'll see there's like millions of views on it. So like, obviously you're missing something.
Oh, boo, spooky, oh my god. And then it's the next part. Like, the fact that they're dedicating some time to a next-gen showcase to this, to a game that's basically like little tiny teddy bear robots chasing you around in a carnival or whatever, like, oh my gosh, I am not really into Five Nights at Freddy's, and even the art style of this one, it looks much more different. It's not in the typical Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It looks more like you're in like an amusement park or a huge facility this time. It just, is this supposed to be a reboot? Am I supposed to be excited? I just can't possibly care about it. And that's part of my disappointment, is that this was just so packed with tiny little bite-sized experiences that I felt like nobody was hyped for. But I guess
he felt like nobody was hyped for this multi-million selling franchise, or this franchise that has created a buzz over the internet over a series of years. Every time a Five Nights at Freddy's drops, Markiplier gets on his fucking computer and plays that shit. And he gets millions of views and people pay him to do that shit. Nobody's hyped for that? Get the fuck out of my face.
Talk about Deathloop. Now, Deathloop is a project I've been curious about.
I'm about to get in this motherfucker's ass, because I actually love this studio that makes this game. Sorry if I'm too loud, by the way. I'll adjust that. Yeah, I actually love this studio that makes Deathloop, so I'm going to get in his ass if he says something crazy. Watch.
But before, I actually have a very big soft spot for time loop storylines. I'm very intrigued by it. I actually read books by time loops and stuff. I like this idea of like you're trapped in some sort of scenario and the only way to escape is to try and master a singular day. And that's kind of what this is about. But this time around, they showed a lot more combat. They showed more about how the gameplay itself is going to unfold. And this is by the people who did Dishonored. It looks a lot like Dishonored. Like this time around, now that we're actually seeing stuff unfold, I mean, this is straight up just pretty much Dishonored. From blinking around to using magical assassination tools or whatever. Like, if you've loved this studio's previous work, it certainly seems like it's going to be more of the same. And I mean, I'll be honest, I'm definitely buying Deathloop. I'm definitely going to be reviewing Deathloop. I mean, there was like 3 games from this entire presentation that I'm definitely going to get. Returnal, Deathloop, and Final Fantasy VII Remake Interlude. Now, this is...
Okay, so I feel like he's about to close here. Let me just touch on what he said. He said that it's very similar, about the same pound for pound to Dishonored. You know, there's big similarities between the games. I would say that if Dishonored is done, Deathloop might be a worthy spiritual successor, just based off of watching the trailers and the gameplay. I don't know if pound for pound is going to be about the same type of thing, though. Like Dishonored, there was like a mana system, and I don't know if there's going to be a mana system in here. I don't think this game is based off of stealth. As you can see, there's like multiple guns. There is a melee weapon, but it doesn't seem like it's your main weapon. In the trailer, you know, we just seen it. He has these two split pistols. They combine together to make a rifle. Then he has a bolt action rifle. There's a shotgun. I think there was actually 2 shotguns, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely more offense heavy from what I can see. And it looks like you're meant to definitely agitate them. But stealth is definitely an option, you know. And I wish more people could evoke things like that, because hearing this clown talk about it, it just seems like they're making Dishonored 3. And this is not going to be Dishonored 3. It's just going to be similar. That'd be like if they had a trailer for Soul Calibur 7, right? And he's like, I like it, but it reminds me a lot of Tekken. And it's made from the same people who make Tekken, so it's pound for pound Tekken. If you like Tekken, you're going to like Soul Calibur. It's not the case. Anyway, let's continue. He says, oh, before we continue, he says Final Fantasy VII Interlude is intergrade, you fucking moron.
Is the project that I feel like we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year. Like, it's already kind of just blowing my mind. So here's why Interlude is bizarre. So this is 2 things simultaneously. There's going to be a Final Fantasy VII.
I do remember a little bit about this part. I'm about to go in.
Remake PlayStation 5 upgrade, which, okay, we kind of all expected, but additionally, Interlude is a new, huge story chapter. Much like if you played a bunch of the DLC for the Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 15 had these standalone things called episodes, which were basically tiny side stories of the individual characters going on their own adventures, figuring out new recipes and stuff, and it added directly into the main story.
Real quick, I'm just going to be a diva. I know he's using Final Fantasy 15 because it's the same franchise to explain this, but this is not uncommon of different games to do stuff like this. If you remember Last of Us 1, it had a DLC on PS3. It was called Left Behind. It wasn't called Episode Ellie, but it was Episode Ellie. There's many other things like that that exist. I believe there's a DLC of Gravity Rush that allows you to play with another character for a little bit. Infamous Second Son had a DLC called First Light where you play with another character. This is not totally uncommon, and sometimes they're not even very small. Sometimes they could be a pretty decent chunk of gameplay. So, yeah.
Without actually interrupting it. Well, this is the same thing, but we're playing as Yuffie. The optional character from the original Final Fantasy VII is kind of getting her own adventure with a new sidekick. Now, graphically, it looks fantastic. I've actually been looking at some of the stuff here. Like, visually, it's cool that this is here. It's really interesting.
Shout out to Nibelian, by the way. His Twitter is pretty good, besides all the Elden Ring posting.
that we're seeing stuff like this new photo mode and stuff, but I'm kind of just shocked because one of the craziest things of all is the fact that they're bringing in stuff from the extended Final Fantasy VII universe. Now, I'm like almost losing my mind. I'm trying not to scream because the implications of this are so wild.
He looks like a fucking doofus saying this, because he's making it seem like a negative thing. He's saying the extended Final Fantasy VII universe. It's not extended. It's all a compilation. Like, you could say, yeah, they come from like different consoles, different ways to play or to view or watch, but it's not really extended, I guess. I want to say they're all part of the same compilation. They're all Final Fantasy VII. They're just different parts of Final Fantasy VII, and I don't see how that's a bad thing. All of Final Fantasy VII is pretty much great, if you ask me. I can't really speak for Before Crisis, though.
But they're actually going to be bringing in people from Deep Ground and bringing in people from like the sequel, which was Dirge of Cerberus. Like, some of the freaking extended fiction of Final Fantasy is hated. A lot of people straight up hate the Final Fantasy VII prequel, which was called Crisis Core, and the Final Fantasy VII sequel, which was called Dirge of Cerberus. And of course, there's the movie Advent Children and the book, which is The Kids Are All Right. Like, there's a lot of different pieces of the Final Fantasy lore that people don't know about. And it seems like they're just going to shove them all together and see how they work. I don't know what this means.
Are you an idiot? Like, what do you mean you don't know what it means? Before Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, they said that they want this to be the ultimate vision of Final Fantasy VII. So what they're going to do is they're going to find a way to mix everything together. I have the theory that Dirge of Cerberus won't even exist anymore in this compilation. I have a feeling that Vincent is going to get his own thing. They're going to split off at some point. At some point, he's going to be fighting Omega while Cloud and the others are going to be fighting Sephiroth in the end. And that's my theory. But this isn't a bad thing. Dirge of Cerberus... Well, actually, let's hit Crisis Core. Crisis Core might not have been liked for gameplay. I don't have like a poll or anything, but Crisis Core is very well liked in the community for its story. People love Zack, even more than Cloud. I mean, I don't like him more than Cloud, but he's a pretty cool character, even though he got anger maxed at the end. But, yeah, most people pretty much dig that story. Dirge of Cerberus is a whole different animal. I don't know how many people like it, but I like it well enough. It fits into the Final Fantasy VII compilation. It's the last game. It's the last part of the compilation. And it left on a cliffhanger, which was weird. But I think that Dirge of Cerberus would done right and wrote like just slightly better, it will be just fine. People love Vincent. They'll still love Vincent. And Yuffie, hey, let's be clear, by the way, Yuffie was available in Final Fantasy VII after you leave Midgar. It was just a rare occurrence. So, her being here in Midgar is not a totally outside-the-box type of thing. There had to be a reason why she was there. I'm sure they're going to have a reason why she's around Onaga and Cosmo Canyon, too. So, yeah.
I mean, as a Final Fantasy fan, I'm of course going to pick this up. I'm of course going to study it. I'm going to make some individual videos about that DLC when it comes out. But additionally, I'm just kind of in shock as to what does it mean? Like, this is some serious time-altering craziness that is just, it doesn't even make sense. But I'm glad I got to yell about it. If I had to put a score on this, I'd probably give the entire state of play a 4 out of 10. I did appreciate parts of this. I definitely really liked that we saw more of Kina. I definitely liked the extra deep glance we got to see of things like Returnal. Deathloop, I mean, it looks good, but I definitely want to play it myself. And Final Fantasy VII Remake is still Final Fantasy VII Remake. A lot of these indie games bringing back Dodgeball again and again, I'm just kind of blown away as why this is how they decided to start off 2021 as the biggest.
How long ago did Final Fantasy 15 get announced? Final Fantasy 15 got announced, I want to say it's been, this is just a guess. Actually, let me see. Final Fantasy 15 trailer. And that'll give me an idea of when everything else was announced. because God of War was officially announced alongside Final Fantasy 15. These were just announcements, by the way. Did I say 15? I meant 16. Final Fantasy 16. That was in September. So 3, 4, 5, 6. That was about 5-6 months ago. So this guy thinks after that reveal trailer that we will get more gameplay and more to show off. And God of War didn't even have gameplay. We didn't even get to see Kratos. We just seen a logo. But for some reason he thought we were going to get like a lot more of that. Like, dude, if they didn't feel comfortable showing anything 5-6 months ago, why do you think the game is like half done to the point where they could show a trailer of it? Are you crazy? How long have you been gaming?
Commercial for the PlayStation 5, and it's a bunch of cheap indie games that are probably going to be free on PlayStation Plus in a matter of months. What do you...
That was a very dumb statement. I think that the draw behind PlayStation 5 right now was Demon Souls, Miles Morales, even though that was like a I almost said interdimensional, inter-console, whatever you want to call that, like a shift between the consoles. It was on PS4 and PS5 is what I'm trying to say. Even though it's on PS4, it has a lot of great features on PS5. We also have, again, Demon Souls, Destruction All-Stars, and a bunch of other games got updates so they don't look as bad. We got Neo 2 remastered and Neo 1 remastered. Those games look gorgeous and play very well. There's a lot coming. Guilty Gear Strive, we just had a beta for it. It's better on PS5 because of the loading, and it plays in native 4K instead of 1080p. Like, there's a lot of reasons to have a PS5 or want to get a PS5 right now, especially since, you know, they announced so many things in September. I think we really forget that September had a lot of great announcements here, and that's kind of his problem. And we have Returnal coming out soon, so that's going to be another PS5 game. Control's a PS5 game right now that's free. You can pick it up for free. Well, no, it's March, right? Well, whatever. I'm pretty sure you could pick Control up, and it plays better than it does on PS4. So I don't know what this clown is talking about.
What do you think about it? Did you have a chance to watch it? Did you tune into my live stream? The chat was absolutely freaking angry. There were so many people spamming poop emojis. This was crazy, but thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. I am like...
Okay, I've had enough. I don't care about his chat. I don't care about his followers. Dreamcast Guy is a nutcase. This guy does not... He doesn't have an eye for detail. He doesn't have an ear for games. He doesn't have an eye for games. All he does is sling around buzzwords. Look at his hat, man. Dreamcast Guy. Half of the fucking gaming world doesn't even know what a Dreamcast is anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I hate names like that. Like, hi, I'm the fucking TurboGrafx guy. Like, that's what that shit is. To my generation, that's what that shit sounds like. The TurboGrafx generation, right? That's what the Dreamcast Guy sounds like to these motherfuckers that were born in 2007. You know what I mean? Anyway, I think I'm done here. I just had to go over that because some of these people with these reactions are ridiculous. Like, unrealistic expectations are always going to end up making you feel sour in the end. And look at this face. This is a perfect reaction to how I feel after watching this. I might thumbs it down. Who knows? Anyway, I'm out.